Welcome to the council meeting for Wednesday, the 28th of May, 2025. Councillor Kleiman will be leading us through this morning.
Kia ora, te marino, kia whakapapa, punano, te moana. E hurahari, mā tātou e te ranginau. Araka atu aha mai, tātou e tātou katoa. Kui e tātou.
Wonderful, thank you, Sarah. Apologies today from Tracy Patterson, and we have Councillor Lily Farage.
Not quite online.
Not quite online. Maybe if we just do an apology for lateness and note there should be anything else we but it's back. And Councillor McKinley is of course here. He's just doing the chair and stepped outside. I'm happy to move that the apologies be accepted. Sarah is happy to second those. Thank you. For those in favour, against. Everybody in our public forum today. Maybe next time.
Be the gallery those ones.
Yeah.
Quality, not quantity.
Agenda's just completely.
That's the union.
There we go. No, good. Yeah. Confirmation of the minutes, please. Sally's happy to move those. Thank you. Cheryl's happy to second them. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And we have our declarations of, sorry, that was for minutes on 15th of May and the 20th. Declarations of interest begin on page 24. Does anyone have anything that they wanted to update or note? Thank you. And we now move to our community board here update, and our Cromwell Community Board Chair will join us online. Good morning, Anna.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation to speak to you all today. Kia ora koutou. It's great to be able to come and give an update on what's on top in Cromwell for the CODC today. Apologies that I'm not there in person. My day has got very busy and I've made the call that I don't really have time to drive to Alex and back again. I know it's I much prefer to present face to face, but I really need to stay put here today rather than drive down. Sometimes that whole face to face thing doesn't quite work out. The biggest Cromwell news obviously is the highly visible thing that is happening as you drive through the gorge and approach Cromwell, the progress on the Cromwell Memorial Hall. There's very tangible reality sitting now on the old hall site. We know that progress will be harder to track via drive-bys as the work moves to the interior of the hall now that it's closed in, and we'll have to wait until landscaping starts, until we're quite a long way through to start seeing stuff happening outside again. I note that your agenda includes some decisions that have a big impact on this project and how the hall will be run and the museum fitted out. And one of the things that I just wanted to reiterate is what our community, the Cromwell community, have repeatedly told us about this venue, and that they want it to be open, accessible and available to the community. And I know that presents a challenge because this is a district venue, this is a district asset, and how that's managed and what that costs to the ratepayer and to the user is part of the discussions I know that will come up in terms of how the running of the hall will be managed. But I think it's really important that we consider what it means for it to be an accessible, usable space for our community, is that it will mean opening hours that are outside of regular work hours, because if we want the space to be used by community groups and to be used by our community as well as by people coming in and using the cycle trail and visiting the museum, then there needs to be availability for evening time slots for community groups. The presentation that Kaha gave to the community board before our last meeting, looking at the cultural narrative for the hall, left the board really excited for how the project will come together to celebrate Māori and settler histories within our community. I think there's going to be a really nice marrying of those things for us, and it's certainly made us really excited to be able to share more of that with our community as we move along in this project. It was great that we had that time to ask lots of questions of Ōkaha and to get a real understanding of where Kaitahu influence is coming in the project and in the design of some of the features of the exterior, interior and landscaping. I think it's really exciting. Other big stuff in Cromwell at the moment, of course, includes the progress on the Gare Ave estate to prepare the site for upcoming development. It's like a great big sandpit with supersized Tonka toys in it at the moment, but a really visible sign for our community that this long-awaited residential development is about to get underway. This will complete the final stage of what's been a very successful subdivision development for council and the Cromwell community. I can see the progress from the dining room. In fact, when those big trucks are going, the house has a bit of a shake going on, but it's really great to see that happening. And I know that the community is excited to see the next developments. I've already had people emailing asking me how they can get on the list as first home buyers. So we might need to think about how those comms have gone out to people without a plan for that really in place yet. So, but that's great. That means there's excitement for what's coming next. We're also really keen in Cromwell to keep options and discussions open around our town centre so that the eventual development of this stays in the sightline of council and our community. Action on this has been a really long time coming, and our community are feeling like we're just in a continual loop of consultation and planning, that we're just throwing good money after bad because we seem to be in the same part of the process many years on from when we started. This is my 9th year on the Cromwell Community Board, and we've certainly been at the same point in development of the town centre for some time, for all of the time that I've been on the board. We're also really keen to keep on working on the investment strategy that we have been working on to ensure that endowment land and proceeds for the development of this is really carefully managed and planned for in a strategic way for the benefit of our community. We've really enjoyed the work that we've done on this so far, and are really just keen to keep that going. So as those developments that start to realise proceeds from endowment land come online, that we know exactly what's going to be happening with that funding and how the funds that aren't already put aside for projects are going to be managed for the benefit of our community in the future. That's really all I have, unless you guys have got some questions for me. For us, it's really over the remainder of this term, it's business as usual, keep things ticking along, knowing that there's quite a lot of changes coming for the way community boards work once we hit the next election cycle, and the representation around our table will look quite different. So we're keen to keep on working to make sure that we understand that, and that we have that positive liaison relationship and working partnership with council and community board. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you very much, Anna. Has anybody got any questions at the moment? Oh, he looked like he was going to say something. That's why there was a long pause.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
All good without questions?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, and that's really interesting to note that people are already getting in touch with you after it obviously did go out. We were going to prioritise some of those areas for first-time buyers. So that's exciting that people are getting in touch, and you are quite right. We probably should have a plan for managing that. So we'll have a chat about that. And
just say we haven't got a process yet, but keep on the lookout. The comms I've sent back to them.
perfect.
Right.
Thank you.
Cheers.
That is wonderful. Thanks so much.
Team, have a productive meeting. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah. Right, so we now move to the Cromwell Memorial Hall operations decision with Jen Bristol and David Scoons.
Good.
Thank you. So I'll take the report as read. This report is really to get some direction from council on the cafe space, cinema and catering kitchen being considered for lease to commercial operators. At the Cromwell Community Board meeting earlier this month, we discussed that leasing the spaces potentially has a lower risk and could provide a better option for community. So they asked us to go out to market for with quite a broad scope so that we can get a range of options that we would bring back to council and the board to consider.
Any questions?
Agree with the superintendent report, council should not be involved in cafes or villages. Give us,
You don't whip up a particularly good scone version?
Cheese ones. Cheese ones.
they do a good cheese bomb, stay away from, they're professionals on those sort of things.
Well, this shouldn't come as any surprise. It's the right thing to do to find out what's out there. You know, the design has incorporated those facilities and they need to be operated by someone. And I think Council McPherson's right. It's councillors. I don't know of any council that runs those things. If they do, I wonder why. It's interesting though that when the board was first looking at refurbishing the previous hall, that they actually did in the plans have a cafe. And because of some of the feedback at the time of the community at the time, we took it out, said not our game. But I think where we are now, most importantly, is that if you look at the cost of running this thing, is you've got to offset those costs in some way, shape or form. And here there's an opportunity to do that. And it should be a really good commercial operation that someone can do. And let's see what's out there and then we can see what we can do to reduce the cost to run the place. So I think it's a logical next steps. I'll be happy to move if we get to that stage.
Sam?
I was just going to say, I think there's a great example actually in Dunedin at the museum. I was there yesterday at the Precinct Cafe, and they actually shifted from their premise that they're on to move into the museum because they realised there was a lot of traffic there, and that's working really well. So I think that's a great example of what it could look like.
And this will be a real broad brush, like these are the maximum parameters and tell us what you're doing and what you'd be looking at, for instance, so we can kind of, because it's not really apples to apples if we're looking at somebody that wants to know different operating hours, but it gives us a good idea of what the scope is for a space like that, yeah? Yeah, and see what they come back rather than us dictate, because again, but we don't know, the market might be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday bistro, or it might not, but
Yeah.
that's not for us to make those decisions, so let people come back to us, that's fine. Yeah, we'll see.
You just something occurred to me when you said that is that the opportunity that comes out, so someone might come and say, not only do I want to operate your cafe, catering kitchen, but actually want to operate the whole facility.
Yeah.
You know, there's an opportunity that could come out of this that someone might say, actually, I'm into this sort of stuff, and
That whole complex becomes a stimulus, but that's not the less parameters we put on that, you know, just that would widen.
the opportunity that starts with us
Yeah.
could be bigger, and someone might see a fantastic model that makes it work, and we can only but consider. I'm not saying you do the right way.
Right.
And I know there was a comment from the board around, you know, the potential for the commercial kitchen to be available for community use, which may or may not be able to be facilitated, but would you anticipate that anybody from our community groups who are thinking that they would like to have a say on that should also get in touch and find out a bit more? Or what would you think would be the procedure for them? They might not be looking to put in a tender as such, but they might like to know a bit more. How would they go about that?
I think the way we put our expressions of interest is probably more for the user. So when we do put our expressions of interest out, it'll be if they do need to use the catering kitchen, would you work with you? And just so it can be intertwined, you know, and it could be, you know, if someone comes in who makes croissants at 4 AM when other people aren't using it, that could be a nice way to intertwine the two. But what's going up with the expressions of interest is the assumption it would be used with other people as well. And I guess the facilities being just like that too. So yeah, the community groups don't have to be too worried about, you know, is this their time? But, yeah, we're just going up already. Yeah, so see who wants to come and play.
I think that'll be a challenge for us in the future, is saying making sure this place is accessible, affordable and usable by the community, because that's a big part of our community hall's work. And listen, we sat through long-term plan hearings and we got that in spades.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference, dare I say, though, between the Paul Byrne Hall and the new Cromwell Memorial Hall. There's going to be a huge difference, but the issues from the community are not dissimilar. A lot of volunteer work in Paul Byrne Hall, a lot of volunteer work in the Cromwell Memorial Hall as well.
I could only tell from you.
And we'll continue.
I'll second that, you know.
Thank you. Neil has moved that. Sarah has seconded it. Any further discussion or questions?
No.
That's why I distracted them for you anyway, that's right.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you.
Do I do the next paper turn now? Sorry.
Whoops. Ooh. How's that?
Hang on, you were lagging a little bit. You could have given me
Yeah, can't they keep up?
25, 11, 14, you could tell that one for instead.
That's brilliant.
She was doing such a good job. I didn't want to step in.
Just
25.11.4, museum fit out with the Cromwell Memorial Wall, and it is Phil.
Morning. So I'll take the paper's been read, but in short, the base bill is progressing quite well, so we're on track for a 2026 finish. Late last year, we completed a museum concept description, which effectively informed us what would it cost for the museum to fit out within the facility. And what that drove was numerous funding applications, which we commenced this year. First off, we got 1.1 million received from CLT, which is designated allocated for the museum fit out. And we put in 2 applications through to lotteries, each for 500,000. I've got my phone on, so apologies, and I've just got that literally hot off the press at 10:37. So we have received not 500, which we were seeking, we have received 350,000 from lotteries. And we're starting the OCT, which I think is due July. So at the moment, we're still working towards that 1.6 million sort of, I guess, funding, which forms the resolution decision receiving. So in short, we're seeking the approval to designate delegated financial authority up to 1.6, subject to getting the full 500 on top of the 1.1 through to Peter, so that we can allocate the work through to, as per our procurement policy, through to the contractors. It's involving design, construction, fit out, turnkey piece, but also then holistically, so we've actually got some money to move museum into the fit out as well. So it's open for questions.
Any questions?
1.6 seems a lot of money, surprisingly big house fitted out. To fill out a vacuum in a big space.
So we're pushing the boundaries from the concept perspective, so into animations and interactive, those sorts of technology-based areas.
Nice.
Now that won't be necessary across all the elements, but how far can that go? Really don't want this to be a static, we call it our long-term exhibition. It is trying to bring some technology and really step it forward, hence the numbers. The other areas that we are provisioning is, for example, we don't do this is around like consent. So we've got consents for building the piece, but if we put a wall up, does that impact into fire extinguishers, for example? Now, fortuitously, we're not removing some of those. That's why we did. Take number.
So if you don't get your 200,000 short now, will that have any various effects on what you're thinking about? Obviously, you can still, once you get going, you can still apply for funds, those funds are there.
But that's, there are a lot of things that we'll look at, like it might. Interactive projects. It's one of the steps of this, getting this approval, so we can have a little bit of shopping list and go, we purchase up front, and then what do we potentially not do? And I think just on the 1.6 due, sort of a world-class building to try and be matched with a world-class museum. So that's not the sales pitch there.
Very good.
Sure.
And you can add us
You want to donate?
So given that the
Speaks to it.
Yeah.
you expect here, whether you'll have a full amount.
OCT will be around about July, I think. And if anyone else would like to give a donation,
And our design time frame fits into that July period, it's just beyond July, so we've been ratified the design. All of the funding decisions in before we go.
we are just initial brief, so it's working on this. We're sort of moving to a slightly lower number just in case, with that sort of 200. It's that, so to speak, yeah. They're nice to do. Well,
Can I, oh, sorry.
You go.
I was just going to say that the recommendation is 1.6, but it's actually, I'm wondering if we should, in the resolution we passed, note that actually the total funding required 1.6, of which 1.1 is already there from Central Lakes,
1.1 plus.
plus the 350 that he just said. But just,
That was what I wanted to check as
Yeah,
well. So
because- otherwise no mention in the resolution, so the key thing about this is that it's not proposed to spend any council money
Yeah.
on the design and fit out.
Yeah.
So I think the resolution just needs to reflect the fact that, that the total financial delegation is 1.6 based on 1.1 already approved from CLT, plus 350 now approved from, Hooflung,
Yeah.
lotteries, and that says there's 250 to go.
Yep, go there.
150 to go.
Okay.
So
I
will,
wrote that
You
down.
wrote it down on one piece of paper.
Yeah, well,
Put it on your own piece of paper.
is that what you will be anticipating from OPT, or are those discussions?
We're putting in higher than that.
Yeah,
So, and that might be where it lands. I think funding, generally speaking, is tight around New Zealand, so.
Yeah.
Go for the wrong, isn't it?
Yeah. Plan for the start.
As long as it's perceived that it comes from alternative sources and ratepayers.
Yeah.
Because we've just gone through the long-term plan, we remember the ratepayers and down to walls and it's basic finance, so.
Yeah.
As long as it's, then we take the roads.
Just to put some context on lodgings, there was $27 million worth of applications and only $9 million applicants. So we did really well.
Yeah, 27 requests.
No.
Fill that 27.
Mm.
It totally 27, which they gave us 9.
So I guess that for that resolution, do you want to add one in? Noting that we've got, say. There we go.
1.4.
I'm just thinking what you could write.
It's not subject to that.
Now it's subject to 150,000 being secured from.
Yeah,
500.
So you could put an additional D in there, notes that 1.1 million has been secured from Central Lakes Trust and $350,000 has been secured from lotteries.
Yeah.
That just move out. Just put that in the statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
And that, well, hold on, before you take the whole thing, it'll be subject, that 1.6 will be subject to 150,000.
Yeah.
So not 500, 150. You're nearly there.
Then
Good luck. Who's got change?
David, so I just missed the start of the item, so I'm only
That's right.
asking something. What is provision that is being made for all-site storage within this package, if any?
Within, yeah, so right now, we've got the museums currently in there, but even on. We don't have a use for it just now, so that would be in our interim space, sort of now while it's still open, and probably for the first year while we're in here, while we're working through other things that council are working on, like the back burn development and other use that building and stuff as well. So for the next, from today for 2 years, that would be the site storage, and then we're just working through it.
And the assumption behind it is that it's the all-sites will be needed.
Okay, I know the museum, and so this is run, by the trust, but the museum has a lock-up single as well, for storing some things, as well as out the back at the current museum, so we'll just have to work on best outcome over the next 2 years. Yeah.
Can I suggest that?
that's great.
Can I suggest that actually the C should say subject to successful internal grant funding of the full amount. It doesn't need to be anything else other than that, because then you're noting what's already got. So if that says I've got 1.35, 1.450, then another 150. Just don't think it. Yeah. That's what I think would make more sense.
Body.
Cool. Let's vote.
Pretty amazing.
Yes.
You got that
So
off.
any other questions?
Anything else, council? No? Okay, so the recommendation is that council receives the report and accepts the level of significance, approves council officers facilitate the fit out of the museum in the new Cromwell Memorial Hall, approves to delegate financial authority to the chief executive in the amount 1.6 million, enabling awarding the design and fit out to nominated suppliers as per the procurement policy process, subject to successful external grant funding of the full amount. Notes that 1.1 million has been approved from Central Lakes Trust and 350,000 has been approved from lotteries. E, of course, authorising the chief executive officer to do all that is in solutions and.
I'm just wondering about the need for it to be at this stage.
We just want to note that that is, I guess, us income. So this is a project that's led by, I guess, the Cromwell Museum, and, you know, I guess there's been fitted out to them. It's just noting that council officers are going to be working with the museum.
Right, so say that.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I think it should be with the Cromwell,
To work in conjunction.
Yeah.
Cromwell.
in conjunction with the Cromwell
Yeah.
Museum. What is their proper name?
Cromwell Museum Trust.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Shirley's still happy with that, so Shirley's gonna move, and seconder? Yep. Okay, all those in favour? Against, carried. Thank you.
So next time you come to this table, you better pull rabbits out of hats again.
Yeah.
You realise they set the bar pretty high now.
Okay, item number 25.11.5, the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre, and we have Bex and David here afternoon.
Morning all. Firstly, I take this report as read. Today, we're asking you to consider the recommendation of Roxburgh Entertainment Centre to approve the project structure and proceed with the appointed steering. So on the 1st of May, TBCP met, and it was agreed that a steering group is a really effective way to progress the rebuild of the Roxburgh Entertainment Centre. Any questions?
No, I just want to support that. That's a great idea. And I think as you've outlined, it does mean that you can bring reports back quicker than our meeting cycles, because that would really take a long time if we didn't have that. And I think the board is really keen to put something into the bulletin to actually get expressions of interest for those 4 spots, so that we're actually going out and giving the community an opportunity to say, you know, who could be on that steering committee. So I think we should progress it. Anyone, anything else to add? You move it?
Want to.
Tamer.
Just some clarity, or maybe a really good sound plan around how we're going to communicate that to our public in the TDF, because that's one of the things that's come back to us quite a few times. Not everyone reads the bulletin, not everyone sees the website, not everybody sees Facebook. I'm not sure if that is going to involve you playing the bagpipes on Friday afternoon to advertise the fact, David, or what that might look like. But I think we're going to have to put a lot of effort into that to make sure everybody who even has an inkling that they might want to be involved in this has the opportunity to come along and put their hand up or suggest someone.
Yeah. So picking up on it, if the stakeholder group is going to be formed, is there a process by which those who will be selected?
Yes.
Because I suspect, I'm reading a phone call, you're going to get more than 4.
Yeah.
There might be some concerns that actually if it gets to be this person because of these hats, there's some concerns probably in Roxburgh about saying if you get the wrong group, it could be hijacked. I want to get involved in small town local politics, for goodness sake, why would I do that? But I think there are some genuine concerns, and I just hope we've got a robust way of actually making sure that the group that is predicted is representative and not, as some might say, just the same old ones that keep on putting their hand up and the others don't get listened to because they haven't been there for 150 years.
Can I comment on that? So we've done a really good terms. It's really good that will be selected. And it's pretty clear in those references there to come, if you get a start with this process, you'll be removed if it's generally in someone else. So this is about progression. We've spoken to the board quite a bit about this. The reason we've kept the numbers low is that we can get some quick progress viewers. If the numbers are too high, we can just go around and see
Yeah.
this road.
Agreed. So the selection of those other people is going to be done by the board. And people who have to say that they want to be involved.
They have to sit in it.
And no, do I say, independent, recommendations going to the board to help them in making their decision. I guess what worries me, no disrespect to the board, but sometimes you get too close to it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got someone who's sort of giving you some advice, that's a bit independent, saying actually these people here really stack up, because I'm guilty of it. I know people, I think I know people, so I'm likely to go to what I know. Just raising that may not be the best thing in the end, because we might miss out on some skills and some knowledge that could be really helpful to the process.
Do you want to add something just in you saying that part of that week that resolution that it's not, and maybe another part of the district.
Can it be a start? Could be a 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a really good idea. So, and carry from another district or ward, sorry, it would be the fifth member, in the group.
It's an independent party.
Well, I think given that if you look at, we've got district funding of these things, actually, it's probably not a silly thing to do, is to have just an external lens, that may just be that sort of, but what if, yes, I know you've done it for 150 years, but it's moved on.
Why don't you do that in the whole selection process, done the council, just as a recommendation of 5 people, take that, right?
I think you've got to give the community board the chance to do what it's there to do. But I think it's just about making sure there is some independence there in some way, shape or form, and whether it's one of us is not a bad idea. I don't have a particular view, but I think it's probably a good way of maybe just providing that.
And you also don't need to make decisions today, you guys can think about it when we come back with, the recommendations, you can leave by someone.
Because I think it would be worthwhile, sorry, I'll come to you in a second, Dylan. I think it would be worthwhile signaling this to the Teviot Valley Community Board rather than going, oh, we're also putting in an observer on your board to make sure. I think that is something that we could talk to the board about. Dylan.
I'm just building on that idea. Maybe I'll get this. Anyone expand that, so delegates. So it's not necessarily a council board.
And also I think just from the expressions of interest, what we're going to put in the bulletin, we're actually wanting people to say why they think they should be selected. So we are looking at the skill set.
This is getting to the stage now that it's past the previous way of doing things.
Yeah.
We're not having cake stalls and working bees here.
Yeah.
I think it is worthwhile investigating the option of someone from a different ward. So having some oversight, and whether that be a councillor or a community group member or something, perhaps we could socialise that idea with the board.
We probably should put it in the recommendation, in the resolution.
Yep.
Somewhere between C and D. Maybe. We work out what to say.
Thinking, yeah.
David said the right thing, would you say?
Direct staff.
Yep.
To investigate possible options of
Independent
councillor.
Yeah, independent council.
Representative.
Independent council appointed representative.
There we go.
And then it could be a councillor, then it could be appointed. Like that one, Bill said. Yeah, I heard the message.
Yeah.
It's not that good. No, it's
It's unbelievable.
No,
Coming right. Just coming right.
yeah, on his way out. Did all his best work for the last week.
It's not my last week, I have 5 months to go for Christ's sake.
You got a lot of heavy lifting to do before then, there.
The last week will feel like 5 months.
Jovi was like, oh, it's in progress, start all of this possible investigate. That's it.
After
The representative. You can put the optional. And appointed.
Appointed.
Yeah, representative doesn't remember.
What's lunch?
That's the time. That's what it is. Do you want to put in there from a different ward?
Well, no, I think just direct staff to reinstate the option of
A council,
a council
Representative.
Appointed council representative.
appointed council law representative.
Yeah, so leave representative and just put appointed councillor.
okay, happy with that? Okay, so, receives the report and accepts the level of significance. B approves the proposed project structure. C approves that the Cheviot Valley Community Board has delegation to appoint up to 4 external stakeholders to the steering group. D directs staff to investigate the option of an appointed councillor representative as an additional member of the steering group. E approves the terms of reference document, and F authorises the chief executive to do all that is necessary to give effect to the council's resolutions. If you just take the S off the end of it. And does someone want to move for that? Neil,
Okay.
seconder, Carol. All those in favour? Against, Carol.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry, I'm fine.
The next one says me, but I think,
It does say you, but I feel like
I
the
think the first one
one's
should be
due.
Stu and the next
Yeah.
two could well be Cheryl, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got any. Right, Stu, you can have my place.
Critical over 11.6, emergency funding, welcome QP.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read. So on the 18th of February, in the afternoon, we had high intensity rainfall. Not just in the Cheviot Valley area, it was wider than that, but the significant damage was caused in the Cheviot Valley area. This is on the back of applications that Council and NZTA in January 23, February 24, and November 24 for the emergency works funding in the road space. It was a significantly isolated event that did trigger an excess of 1 in 80-year event and 1 in 250-year event at the Mount Cheviot and the New Zealand Road and weather stations. There was some isolated damage around sort of Road and that area as well, but it didn't trigger the in excess of 1 to 10-year event, and we were able to do those remediation works through our current voting budgets. So today we're here to consider funding 157,633 from the Roading Emergency Works Reserve account, noting that that's currently in $932,746 of deficit. However, both through the long-term planning process and obviously since the report was written, there has been some updates through the deliberations and the funding of that through those royalties, and then that slight adjustment to rates does differ from what's there. But that's on the basis of looking back at the last 10 years of events, ensuring we're addressing that deficit, as well as ensuring we're having enough in there going forward to account for these more frequent events we seem to be having. And one other change is NZTA was consulting on adjusting the trigger to get emergency works funding from a 1 in 10 to a 1 in 20 year event, which would mean that council would have to self-fund anything that didn't meet that trigger. They've delayed the implementation of that, and we'll look at that from 2027 National Land Transport Planning onwards. So over the next couple of years, a 1 in 10 event will still qualify for emergency works funding. So they'll readdress that in the future and not try that environment. And that's it.
Any questions? Obviously, the cost of cleaning out coal was big at $1,500.
Welcome to check.
It was now. It's a big number. No, it's just going to be a regular thing. That's, it always has been. We always had thunder pumps and South Otago got it as well. The nature of that hot time we have and what happens. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There's never going to be enough money in our roading budget and emergency for these things to happen. If I put the same less money in and get the gear to do so.
I'm happy to move, Stu.
Thank you. And I said that. Nigel?
All in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you.
Next we have item number 511.7, that's the main wastewater compliance service update. Yes.
Sharakatu, I take this report as read. Today, instead of the usual nervousness that sometimes comes with presenting a compliance report, I'm excited to share a high-level summary for our compliance with our discharge consent. The report outlines the compliance grades by ORC for 12 wastewater discharge consents. The 2025 audit resulted in 5 consents achieving full compliance, 4 marked as low risk non-compliance, 1 moderate, and 2 significant non-compliance. The 2 significant non-compliances relate to NASB and Rainfree. For NASB, the issues in the abatement notice have been rectified and a request to cancel the notice has been submitted. For Rainfree, the significant non-compliance is due to the unresolved inflow infiltration issues in the wastewater network, which are on the list for action. On the positive side, all 3 discharge consents for Cromwell, along with Rainfree discharge to air consent, has been marked as fully compliant. The 4 low-risk non-compliances are 2 for Alexandra, 1 for Lake Roxrow Village, and 1 for Omicron. The audit grades reflect the progress made in the last 2 years. ORC acknowledged the efforts in both the recent audits for addressing non-compliances and the timely communication. As for Roxborough, the moderate non-compliance related to nitrogen levels is being addressed, and a new aerator was installed this month, and we expect it will improve plant performance and bring the liquid quality into compliance. Thank you.
Simple Roxborough, we won't know, we might be able to let you for the compliance. Because it's during the winter months that has problems, especially the compliant for the summer, and then you see problem. So we expect that following winter this year, or during winter, not seeing in the arena, due to the desludging in the area. In the last months. In terms of the infiltration and inflow issues, that does require enforcement activities that have the connections into the networks. At the moment, we don't have enforcement capability.
I have quite a few questions, but I would also like to acknowledge first that it is really nice to read through a report that says fully compliant, full compliant, full compliant. And I just had a couple of questions for my clarification, please, and some of them you have covered off in your summary. So the deadline that we had on Roxborough of 31 August 2025, do we need an extension on that? And has that been submitted?
It hasn't been submitted, but we will submit it. We're just waiting for the area to go in, which it has now, so we will be submitting an extension soon.
Perfect. Then do I get to and some of the non-compliance related to random things like a sample not being received on time or the O&M manual not being updated. Are we on track to submit the, we had the 17th of June for the O&M manual for NASB. Has that been done?
Yes, and that's why we have applied for a cancellation for the abatement.
Perfect, thank you. How long does that usually take to come through?
I have to send a follow-up email today, so hopefully soon.
Perfect.
Probably distracted with someone else's problems.
Might be. And you covered that off because that was one of my questions was how do we report into the future if we're still saying non-compliance when it's no longer relevant because our consent conditions have changed? So is that process we need to apply for the cancellation of the non-compliance notice?
So we've applied for that. Yes. So then we have to apply for it.
Which is incredibly confusing for our public who are seeing us give a non-compliant report on measures that we're not measured against anymore.
And I think that's where it gets confusing when sometimes those reports in the media and those things is actually, while it might have status of that, the consent's now been changed, so it's now compliant. There's a process that has to happen in there, but that can show a significant non-compliance even if it's
And just to clarify, so on the day of the audit, which was I think 10th of March, the variation wasn't approved, whereas on the 7th of March, the variation was approved, which means they can only mark the consent on the day.
On the day.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And we did get caught in the cross because the OR sent you their annual report to the council based on the previous calendar year. And because we're probably one of the first councils that's audited in each calendar year, we had actually been audited for 2025 and they were audited on 2024.
I think it's probably worth noting that a substantial amount, would we say, of our non-compliance relates to stormwater cross connections, where people have their stormwater connected to our.
We have been obviously working through a lot of improvements and now that's one of the difficult things to follow. It's just you get particularly we do get high flows coming in during rainfall events, so we need to involve them.
And I think it's worth noting for our public, this council is asking the government for assistance to force people to make these changes. We have asked nicely for people to please stop discharging their stormwater from their house into our system because it is costing everyone. Martin's fixed his problem, thank you. But if you had a letter from us, please know that this is not going to go away. We need you to fix the issue if it is your house.
I didn't realise we wouldn't get fined though if I didn't do it.
It's coming. It's
There was
coming.
previous legislation that has seen like that's not fine for like illegal connections, but that got repealed. So now we have nothing. Really make people be incentivised to fix.
The Ranfurly,
Name and shame.
Ranfurly obviously isn't going to make the grade by the 30th of June. Are there any implications for us?
So we will be applying for an extension. Everybody is waiting. Yes, the plan is to refurbish the wetland and restart the pond as well. We need time to be able to comply with the changes with the apply for an extension.
So we are very tender for this now for the desludging. We're also kind of the new wastewater performance standards. We had anticipated that that the legislation would have passed in June, July, and then we would have had those, but they're now looking like they'll be after November when the next October before the legislation's passed, so we won't get them finalised until after that. And of course, those new standards might change what the discharge method should be for the long term for Ranfurly. So it may be that rather than reconstructing the wetland, we may need to look at what may be better for us just to step ahead and look at discharge to land instead of the wetland.
And
So we're working through
the process. So we'll have applied for the extension before the deadline?
Yeah, we will apply for the extension regardless, but that we don't, if it doesn't make sense to move ahead with changing the discharge method, we will reconstruct wetland. But there may be a better option because it's going to cost us a lot of money to reconstruct wetland.
And that was my final question, was at the front page of every compliance monitoring report from ORC, they highlight that their compliance audit and monitoring is cost recoverable on a 100% basis, but I didn't see the invoices there. They said they were said separately. What sort of money does it cost us?
We budget for that every year. I've actually reduced the budget for next year because now we will comply to get these audited. So it's maybe around, I think it was around, we were blowing our budgets. We had about $40,000 budgeted for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that the audit costs of the regional council is one aspect, but it's all the costs of ours that go along towards our in-house monitoring that we're doing. And I guess it's a clear thing for saying here that we're required to make sure we comply and we do what we do, and we spend probably a damn sight more than $40,000 a year doing that to provide that consent, which is the right thing to do. But then this other layer that comes in and says, well, the regulator will come and check, which is also right, but none of this stuff comes cheap. and that's a cost. And as the standards go up and you get different consents, then that'll increase the monitoring costs back over there as well. I suppose one thing that should stay constant is what they do here. They're absolutely right to say, if you are not in a non-compliance space, then you get less audits and therefore those costs go down.
If we spend probably in the region of around $20,000 a year generally on the sampling programs, we are bringing that collection of some of those samples in the 1st of July. If that's just the taking of the samples in the laboratory work, then there's our staff and generally Joyce and Philippa who reported on the
Well, my question was that last one, was actually, when we get in a manual or a work compliance manual, get pretty phonetic and get that non-compliance.
And so if that staff member has changed and the name and the manual of the staff member role and the phone number's changed, then we would get a low level non-compliance. So it's very hard to get full compliance all of the time because it doesn't take.
Which is not fixing anything.
No.
It takes more staff, more time, more bad
But the problem with that, Stu, is that if you don't get it right, there it becomes a slippery slope and you end up like somewhere else.
Yes.
It would be nice if they were on site and said, oh,
Don't
maybe a number needs to be changed.
And one of the things I find quite strange about the process is that we do the testing. Council does the testing, council does the reporting, and then people, oh, I see, so I do the auditing. With the day, I would have thought there was going to be a trust relationship between the two. It shouldn't be ORC doing it.
So we take the samples go, well, we actually at the moment contracted. Contracted takes the sample, sends to the lab, the lab provides the results, we forward the results to the ORC. So, you know, the lab's really doing the analysis, all you're doing is disseminating the results.
I just think that that's where perhaps councils can misappropriate the results. And so that they perhaps not look at the same ones in the ORC. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of information in here at the moment, through a neighbouring county saying that the information that the ORC is getting is not correct. That would happen if the ORC was the one that's instigating the testing rather than putting it on to the county to do the testing and reporting and information.
We would, yeah, but it would cost a lot more than anyone that's a test. Yeah.
That'd be a fundamental change of the whole way that consent compliance is done. At the end of the day, the consent holder under the law, I think the applying is the one that's required to ensure compliance and meet the conditions of their consent. And all that happened if we did have it the other way around and the council did it, would just be charged back, be cost plus. Control. Yes.
It can be really serious penalties too, what the private parts. So I know one that the services something. If we were providing false information, it might really significant. So I would imagine it would be likewise through the regional consents process as well. You know, they're auditing some of the information.
So what we should say to our public, our community, is that this is actually very open, honest and transparent, and that the ORC are getting the correct information from this council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they take samples versus themselves.
Is there any other questions? Anybody else? Okay, so the recommendation is that we receive the report. You know, the leader and speaking to please. Sarah and Emma. All those in favour? Yes, carried. So we go to item number 25.11.8, Gransville and patio road water supplies, patio road varying 9 H94.
So I come from both Patrick and Kerry here. So Patrick, of course, is responsible for the upgrades that are underway, particularly projects upgrades, and then Kerry's been working on preparing all the information for the drinking water regulator for us to continue to operate these supplies without a boiling water notice until the upgrades are completed. So I'll take it that you read the report. That the issue we've got is that because these are source water supplies that don't have a protozoal barrier on them, the drinking water regulator has decided that that risk needs to be mitigated until those barriers are put in place. We have probably been moving along on the basis that provided we got them in place by December, then nothing had changed from the last 20 years. But that's not the case from the perspective of the regulator. So we have been working very hard, and I would say it's been a lot of work. We've set my team to try to find a way through this where there is a notices put on by the Ranfurly and Canning Road. So the initial work we did got sent to by the regulatory staff and tomorrow went to the technical review team. The technical review team came back with some comments. We've included some things that identified would give us an indication that there might be some sort of an issue going on out there, and that was considered to be an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff after the fact. So we've removed reference to any reporting of illness out of our risk mitigation plans now, and our risk mitigation plans focus on the things that are in place to avoid getting any in the first place. So we have got the device installed this week to do additional analysis, continuous monitoring that they wanted undertaken, and we're just waiting to hear back now from the technical review team who are now reviewing our updated information. Advise us if we consider it to be satisfactory or not. But we have had to set the critical control points for turbidity shown in the supplies at a lower level, which does mean that there is, we would expect that there will be more boil water notices coming in between now and Christmas, or when the supplies are made, like new upgrades and commission. But we think that it's better to have those as on a periodic basis when there's a heightened risk than just to have a precaution for the water notice. That's not necessarily a view that's shared by the
Any questions?
Yeah. So the recommendation is that we receive the report. 2, consider the mitigation measures being taken between managed drinking water safety risk on the Pettiora and Ranfurly water supplies, while the Pettiora treatment barrier upgrades are being undertaken. And I have a mover and
Just before you do, sorry, just
Yeah.
the only thing I think we're missing here is that the engagement of those respective communities to make sure that they're all over this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're not doing a good job, but I don't live in Ranfurly, I live in Pettiora. And I guess is that today recommendations are quite appropriate, and what you're talking about doing is the right thing. But I suppose the key thing is that it's really important that the communities are aware of what's happening, and what the outcomes are going to be, because we thought we were doing the right thing for the right reasons. Because what worries me is the regulator now says boil water notice permanent.
So we had proposed, so this kicked off in early April. This sort of happening, and we had proposed putting a letter out to everybody who's connected to the site. And we were asked to we were told not to send that letter out until they had undertaken a technical review. So we have to wait till they review these documents again before we were allowed to send that letter out.
And one of the challenges was they stipulated in some of their correspondence that we had to ensure people understood the information they received.
Oh, cool.
So I'm not sure if that means we have to run some sort of pop quiz on the information that you've had, and you've got to have 100% pass rate, or I don't know how we ensure people have read and understood.
It's possible. I can't make sure he understands what I say. He comes from there.
Yeah, we're proposing to do, once the letters go out, we will do a couple of drivers.
One thing.
Sessions out there so that people can come and ask questions.
Good idea.
close off the achievers for the.
No,
Today, we actually formally approved the project today.
Oh, okay.
To Port Clover, we've been negotiating with them for the last week or two as a preferred contractor. Their program stipulates they'll have the work done by December, so we've got tangible evidence we're actually taking action.
We're going to listen to you.
No, we'll find out.
I don't think it's actually relevant that we're building something at the moment, that what all they're looking at is that there's risk because it's not DNA. Look, I guess that, you know, nothing's actually changed from a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but there's standards are now being rigorously applied.
So that in mind, I'm just wondering, we're going to note the report, but do we need to have something here so that when you've got your results in community information, education type something? I hate to think you couldn't do something for 3 weeks because we didn't have a meeting.
Oh, no, so the mitigation plans identified that we are proposing to send a letter to everybody and that we will drop those drop-in centres in once the letter goes out. So we are just waiting to hear back from them.
So I think we should just not be receiving the report. I think we should be noting the mitigation plan that's detailed, because I think that's important.
Yeah, and I look.
Receiving it's too easy.
Yeah, we've essentially, the easiest thing for us to have done would have been to prepare the report. Yes, we're trying to avoid that, but it has taken quite a lot of work to achieve that.
And what's the relationships?
Look, I think we really want to make sure that when we do say to the community that there's a boil water notice in on any of our supplies, that they understand the supply chain risk. Something has changed and they need to take a greater level of care.
And I think that's the thing that you highlighted previously, Jeremy, when you said it's not necessarily a change, but the regulations, the standards are now being vigorously enforced.
Yeah.
And look, I think, you know, the other thing is we have heard from some of our community that they believe it's fine. And I think this is an example of, you know, we are still working to be full compliance on some of our supplies. And it's quite a lot of work to achieve all the expectations.
And that's where there's a gap in the understanding out there in the community, because it's been okay, but it's because regulator now is really coming through. Down tough on us, but the community, that gap is lacking the understanding out there. It's still the consequences here, because something, you know, what we've always understood has been okay, it's now not okay.
That's the challenge. People won't notice any discernible difference in the taste, smell, or otherwise of the water coming out of their tap.
And also, like the reports, is people become a bit desensitized as well if you just continually challenge them. It's got to be, you know, to people take notice, you've got to have something occur. The intel, and if you just do a blanket, then they just.
So I think we should be noting the A, receiving the report, and then B, we should be noting and approving the respective protozoa risk management plans that will be implemented once the regulator tells us we can. Can't think about this. No, I was looking for Patrick to give me the right words to. No.
I would never try and push you.
Can you repeat that? Notes and approved.
They're not altogether familiar with some of these supplies to the level. You know, we have continuous monitoring on all their supplies. They have the SCADA systems in place. There is automatic shutdowns that happen, but that's not the same for every small supplier across New Zealand. So when we went through it, we kind of thought, oh, it was perhaps some things that we had in place that they didn't understand.
You're frustrated?
I would say the role is becoming incredibly challenging.
Politics.
Political thing.
The fact that they found that we had our with that makes
Well, we're waiting to hear. So
They haven't responded to that.
okay.
You two should be separated. Why?
I just said it like when I was at school, I used to be frustrated.
Noted and approves the mitigation plans subject to Taumata Arawai approval.
Approves the implementation of the mitigation plans subject to.
You might just want to check.
My spelling is wrong. T-A-U-M-A-T-A. T-A-U-M-A-T-A. It's one word.
AU.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Introduction.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
I just think implementation of the respective mitigation plans.
Implementation.
Yeah.
So, are we happy with this? So the recommendation is that we receive the report. Or we receive the notes and approves the implementation of the mitigation plan subject to Tamata Harawai approval. Everyone happy with that? Okay, so we need to move or to second. Thanks, Sally. Sarah, all those in favour?
Aye.
Please. Carried.
Thank you.
Right. I'm just going to move the speaker down a wee bit. People online has audio issues. I'm going to correct that. Working.
Oh, right. That owl's looking fluffy today. What's the matter with this one?
It's been in somebody's bag.
Yeah, right. But the other one we're not sure about. So just gonna, sorry, just change the whole table. Just passing them.
I think we're to my right.
Right, yeah, so it's more in the middle.
It's good you did it. It's very, it's very,
Yeah, I think it's got limits.
But too close to Stu.
Yeah, no, don't want too close to here, put it the other side, see the Sleeping Beauty.
We are now going to move to just skip ahead slightly, 25.11.10, minor changes to the register of delegations. Which is Wayne's, but he's not here.
Yes, Wayne's paper. Just that the register of delegations is a living document, and it came to light that there was an oversight in the changes of job descriptions. And it was removed, so when Parks and Recreation moved to community experience portfolio, it was noticed that we had an omission in the delegations and warrants section of the document. So the revised version will read: arranger for the purposes of the Reserves Act 1977, Parks and Recreation Manager, Property and Facilities Manager, and any Property and Facilities Officer and Group Manager, Community Experience. So that Community Experience Group Manager has been updated and is no longer reading planning and that is the change at this stage. Thank you. I'm happy to move that. Cheryl's happy to second it.
Right.
Those in favour? Against? Last year. 2024-25 organisational business plan sets.
Councillors, we have the report in front of you as read. Just a couple of comments there. What you see in the results coming through is a continuation of what was raised last time. Turns out performance measures. We're tracking pretty good across the organisation. There are a couple of areas, Three Waters and planning and regulatory, where we are likely to struggle to meet those targets. And probably just to also say, you'll get another report that's very similar to this. The Peter and myself and ERT are going to take a really good look at this report, because we're thinking there's probably some measures across the organisation that aren't in our annual report. That would be actually really useful to bring to this table. So something like customer service inquiries, some HR, health and safety data, some data within the reports. So on that front, Stina Martin is no longer the organisation project manager role. She's moved to another role. So Pat and I really took the opportunity to look at my team, look at the workflows, and we've appointed a corporate planner. So that's Natasha Robinson. So really to do a lot of this kind of reporting and to have the time to do the thinking. So Natasha has started this week. I think it was fair and appropriate to make her take this report, but you'll see Natasha in this space. So any questions?
Yeah, I got one. I'm just wondering, given when you look at the performance measures and how things are tracking, and some of them don't look too flash, and there's probably some really good reasons, there's some pretty good reasons as to why. But I guess it's about, for me, it's about saying, well, we're 6 months gone, and well, actually, we're more than 6 months gone, we're sort of 9 months gone, we're getting close to it. Is there a plan, and what is the plan for addressing the issues that are, if you like, looking like not being positive at the end? And I guess it's not on this report, not with it, but yeah, you've got someone new doing it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's for the next meeting, we get some sort of update saying, here goes what we're doing to fix these, or sorry, address these challenges that we have. Because I'm not saying that they might be fair, reasonable, whatever, but I think as a governance group, we need to know that here goes the action plan to address and hopefully by 30 June to go, well, we've got them sorted and things have gone from red and back to blue or whatever.
Did we continue with reporting and council has previously, I think probably was actually at the last meeting, we talked about how some of the annual measures are making all get lost in the details. So pulling out the annual, because we can't say anything, so putting on the ones that we can. And also there was some commentary around a bit of some visuals as well. So we'll take a really good hard for this for you and try and make it meaningful so it can be training performance.
I think that update's got to come to us at the next meeting, otherwise it's probably it's June next week, isn't it? So we're probably going to push it up with a pointer stick anyway. Probably by the time we do it, it's going to be too late, but it might be just give us some confidence that when it comes into reporting time that we can turn around and say, actually, we managed to deal with the issues and we've got a plan. It may look bad for the current year, but it's okay going forward.
We can definitely, because we wouldn't do the quarter four report until earliest, it would be, probably the August meeting. So at the next meeting, in light of this conversation, we can bring a paper on the areas where we're not tracking to meet. And there are some of these already reported through the Three Waters area, but we can definitely bring a for conversation, but there will be some months, a few months before we bring these. Needless to say, it was too late.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for that. It's just the way the reporting works. With information you don't know that you're behind until after you've done it, and it's too late to fix it.
And it is challenging with some of those measures as well, and
there's a lot of reading in this report.
really against us.
Yes.
There's an opportunity for that to be addressed to come October. Anything else you wanted to note?
Probably the other thing is the front end of the document we report on sort of projects and sort of priorities. Looking to revamp that as well, in line with the internal work we're doing in our council vision and sort of our priority areas, and look at how we report against that. But I think the real goal in this actually is our performance measuring, so we would look to.
I suppose you have to look at it and say, are these the right things to be measuring performance against?
Yeah.
Are you never going to get away from the red?
Some of them are statutory.
Yeah, I know. That's about probably the ones that what I just said.
And definitely already, as I think I mentioned at our last meeting, already thinking about 2020. So one of this is a big fundamental review of our performance measures. We had sort of reviewed the LGPs I've been involved in, but we haven't done it fundamentally beyond the statutory ones. Had a really good hard look at them and what is meaningful to be reported against these really opportunities, particularly in David's area, to probably be highlighting some of the stuff to the community that they value whole libraries and that kind of stuff. So,
thank you. The recommendation is that the report be received. I'm happy to move that. Sally, seconded, thank you, Nigel. All those in favour?
Right.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're running a little bit ahead of time, but we will leave the determining fixed rate portion of the general rate for after lunch report because we don't want to be trying to cut that short. So we are heading now, please, to financial report. Okay. Page 323.
So take the paper as being read. This report discusses the financials as at the 31st of March 2025. For the first 9 months of the financial year, the council has an overall unfavorable variance of 2.02 million, with an overall surplus of 7.1 million. Income has an unfavorable variance of 1.62 million, with user fees and other charges, rates, regulatory fees, land sales, profit on sale of assets, and reserve contributions being higher than budget, with development contributions, grants and subsidies, and interest and dividend income being higher than budget. Expenditure has an unfavorable variance of $70,000. This has been driven from staff, contracts, refuse and recycling costs, grants, and interest expense in projects. Capital expenditure has a favorable variance of $17.3 million, with 51% of the total revised budget being spent. Projects are in different stages from investigation and design through to tenders and under construction. While we say that this is a favourable variance of $17.3 million, it's also a bit of a concern about where we are in completing those capital programs, being at 51%. The cause of concern is that it actually impacts future budgeting, funding requirements, and also borrowing requirements in the current year. It also has the potential to affect the completion rates in future years, which creates a bow wave that's becoming more difficult to address. The impacts include being able to reasonably budget for debt repayment and also the interest expense on those loans. Internal loans are forecasted to have a closing balance of 4.09 million for the financial year. We currently no longer have any external loans with the community. They've all been repaid. The council has a total of $45 million, sorry, done a typo, of external debt, with planned external debt being 88.5 million. External debt is managed using the operating cash flows to reduce the impact on interest rates. Debt is currently being uplifted in the Three Waters area and will continue to be uplifted as the Cremorne Memorial project continues. Due to capital project completion rates for the Three Waters and the environmental services areas, it is unlikely that the council will uplift the full amount of the planned external debt in this financial year. At the end of 30 June 2024, the council had an audited closing reserves balance of 12.5 million in surplus, which the district-wide reserves are in deficit by 24 million. And we are forecasting to finish this financial year at 15.7 million. Are there any questions?
Yes. Does anybody have any questions?
How are we getting it so wrong with the capex? 51%.
That was what I wondered if,
Like, it's across a few notably. But
what are the impacts of, and it's just come out in paper, we are carrying a surplus. We had anticipated we would be $80 million in debt at the end of this year, and we are barely half that. What are the implications on our budget when that is so far?
You can leave that one for me. I guess the implications are that we have, that there's two parts to that question, I think. The first part is what have we asked the ratepayers to fund that will set the rates, and we've asked them to fund a program of work that will include interest repayments that we haven't achieved that program of work. Therefore, in my view, we've asked too much from the ratepayers. It's coming into our pockets rather than staying in theirs until we need it. So that's the first part. The second part is that if the projects are needed to be done, and they're not done in the year that we asked them to be done, then we're going to do them next year. But we're also going to be putting pressure on ourselves with the program of work we've got next year to complete that as well. So if we kind of put ourselves into, as Donna said, we create a bow wave that is very difficult to overcome, given the resources that we might have here to manage those projects and deliver those projects. So there's two parts to it. Yes, we've taken money off ratepayers, so we're not going to complete the project in the year we said we would. And B, potentially there's an impact on our future capital spend as we push projects into the next financial year, which is already stacked up with projects that we want to complete.
And if I may, just chime in on that. I mean, you've been around this table for a long time, so there's many reasons why projects get delayed. The Cromwell Memorial Hall was probably discussed for what, 15 years before we reached the decision to invest in it. And we probably made a decision in the last LTP to commit funds to it, but we hadn't quite reached the decision point where we could commit funds to it. So it was just a whole process that took its time to work through in a way that then councils can make decisions that they start investing funding against that. And that all adds to delay. If I look at the waters, the bore fields and that sort of stuff in Cromwell, we had to work with a number of the neighbours as well. And so incremental things like that just impose delay on a project that instead of committing funds, say in the new year, you push funding back into where we now May, June, which means that the spend that you had forecast to spend won't happen, it'll there's a multitude of reasons. And for some reason, New Zealand has an issue when it comes to delivering capital programs, and it's well documented. I guess we need to be certain as staff that we need to be disciplined in what we put up in front of you. That is, it has to be a big, is this doable? Is this doable in the time frame that you've said it is? Because the bow wave is real, and it creates pressures down the pathway. And right now we know that construction firms and all that sort of stuff have gaps in their schedules, because we see that in the tenders we put in. So yeah, it's something you need to hold us to account, but equally we still have a democratic decision-making processes that take time, and resource consent processes all take time, that sometimes they conspire to delay the ability to push favour and level country.
Could I just further what Peter said to the comment? When you get behind in your capital spending program, you lose leverage in the marketplace with going out to contractors. You end up going out and lose the freedom to get the best potential deals, depending on what the contracting market is looking like. So hard to define, but you're not in control on how to start. It end up costing you. You end up potentially getting contracts that are not.
At the moment, we're getting lots of nibbles from the vendors, which means there's quite a lot of construction firms out there who have gaps in the work programs, who are very keen on the jobs that we're putting up. So that's a positive sign that it's a competitive market right now for us to be tendering for.
I think the key thing that Peter said, this is not untypical, and not just in local government or central government, but in the big wide corporate world as well. You know, it's been 47 years in a rather big corporate industry, and every year the capital was always the problem. No trouble spending the maintenance budget, it's capital, and it was all those things that you these guys plan ahead, and then it's what you don't know that come along with it all, and so. It's just a reality, and Peter said we're well known for it in New Zealand, and I'll be interested to find out why I think the same in other places, because otherwise we should have picked it up and learned by it, and we clearly haven't. So I don't think we're that untypical at all.
And that will be coming. That carry forward surplus is a problem for you, Peter. we don't want to see that, and our ratepayers have indicated they don't want to see that. And coming next month, the Department of Internal Affairs will be publicising for everybody to see benchmarking against other councils. And part of that will include our ability to complete capital works. And we will see where we're stacking up against other councils, and our ratepayers will be able to see where we're stacking up against other councils. But I think even in the short time I've been here, and Neil's been here longer, and Martin, this ability to complete capital works is our problem every year.
But one would argue it's the way we do our contracts. We don't open up to the market as much as we possibly could have in the past. It's a pretty protective group.
And we go in the government or tenders process, put it out there. So then, but we have a lot of people, you know, the numbers that have come through and actually submitted tenders on our project has been really good.
And that's what's been highlighted along the way, and I think Julie would probably agree. This is not the contractor's ability to do the work. This is our ability to get the work ready to be done. And we are the problem.
You're getting really good numbers of tenders coming. You're getting really good. This is 6 tenders for the bridge home. So it's good to move that. One of the challenges too is if you're designing something and the standards for what you have to provide are changing while you're designing it, it doesn't make it very easy to go ahead with the project. So that is a compliment at the moment when government and the water space is changing the standards. What are you designing?
And all these capital projects have to be managed and administered. And people out there are already saying that we've got far too many staff, they get paid far too much. And it's trying to find that happy medium as well. And that's not easy as well. And then getting the right resources to do it. And they're constant challenges that are not going to go away. One thing this community can't say is that we are well informed as the governance group. Therefore, the community can be equally as well informed, and nothing should come as a surprise. It will, because they don't look at these reports, so they'll say they don't know. That's why they elect us to do what we do, so we can keep that oversight. I'm really looking forward to what the OA publish and see where we're at.
I think it'll be very interesting.
I'll get a very pleasant surprise, or not. But it'll tell us where we're at, just like we're with the Paul Mark, whatever the proper name is, I think about them, you know, those sort of, that tells us where we're at, and that will help us in one way, shape, or form.
The lens will be going on. Epic,
Yeah. And probably what I'd say too is, you know, I mean, we have one really big capital project right now, the Coleman, and that's going well. We have a lot of little capital projects, you know, so it's, and you know, if you think about the ball field in Cromwell, you think about Patiaroa, Ranfield, they all require a lot of staff effort to, there's normal project management processes, but it's writ large, multiplied by small projects, but you still have to have that rigor across that project. So it comes up to the council's decision making. So there's a real administrative process to manage all of these smaller projects. It'd be great if we only had 3 super large projects, but we don't. We have lots of small ones and one really big one.
And what you tend to find is that what we're doing is we're increasing the program, and that's by necessity. You know, if we had gone with the original program that Julie and her team had put up, it was many millions of dollars more than we've got now. But what we're actually trying to deliver is a bigger capital program with the same number of people. So there's 2 options with that. The first option is, can we put more resource into getting these projects managed and across the line and done, or do we cut the program back so that it fits with what we've got as the resource we have available? So those are options as well. I guess the point that we've tried to make is, given that there is a larger capital program, this probably will continue into the future, and maybe the council, we should be looking at how these things are resourced, although it might not be a problem given that
Three Waters, for argument's sake, will be gone and into a new entity by 1 July 2027. So it might be that we rejig the program of work for 2026 and 2027 so that it is more achievable. But that's if the council wishes to deliver. At the moment, it's 58%. We've just got the numbers for April. We're at 58%. We'll probably hit 65 by year end. But as Chief Executive said, this is not an uncommon problem across councils in New Zealand of this size and smaller. They've always struggled to deliver capital program, and it's mainly because it's a larger capital program with a fixed resource to deliver it.
And local water done well. That's the government's response to underinvestment in water infrastructure, and they believe that's the solution to resolve part of this problem.
So, yeah, that was just what I was going to say. Is that where we're saying these capital projects can actually, if we went to a CCO, that these capital projects would be able to be delivered at a faster and more efficient rate?
The CCO would have greater funding resources in terms of its, be able to fund much more investment in any given year. And so instead of, it could bundle up all these projects as well. So it'll have options open to it that a small council doesn't have. And maybe Julie can talk to it.
Yes, so the debates here at the moment in the Three Waters space are not to do with project delivery. We can deliver the projects with the project teams. The issue we have is what are we building? And that takes some time. So an example would be we were doing a water meter replacement program, but we had to understand what are we replacing them with, and we were replacing them with the same kind of meters with smart meters, and put a whole lot of time into trying to look at the options there. And then said this actually needs to go into the new CCR. It's going to be a decision for them. The support systems are for the meter programs. The wastewater projects, we're sitting on Lake Roxburgh villages. It's about $1.6 million wastewater treatment plant that we've been sitting on for years because we're waiting for the sort of standards to finalise and then say yes, don't build it. Likewise with Overcount, we're not doing the investigation with Overcount or Western because we think we'll be building something different thing. That's a big project. Alexandra's wastewater, the Coronal Waters, that's about $5 million. That water, when we're leaving the contracts for pipes, we actually needed multi-years worth of program contract at the moment, so we have to get it. So I'm pretty confident that over the next 2 years, we will be delivering more, but once we know what we're allowed to build, we can deliver it as the pre-work one building that is holding us up.
Is that 40% of undelivered CapEx at the end of this year? Roughly? Will that all be related to Three Waters?
No.
No. There are other projects throughout the organisation that we won't necessarily deliver. So that's Julie's right, it's not just Three Waters.
So Lake Roxburgh Village would be one. From water treatment plant leading program more of that spend this financial year. It's actually the construction of it will actually be in the next 6 months. So, we're not going to get much expenditure for June, but it'll happen for around January next year and most of the states. So we are ramping up again. And this is what happens every time there's a change in what's going to happen in Three Waters. We kind of have tailed off because somebody else is going to change the rules, and then we've got to back up again. We've set our capital program at around 30 million, which is what we knew we could deliver when we delivered this.
And one of the main ones that we haven't really started is the green waste space in Longford. So, there's $200 million there that we're pushing out, and we've said we're going to do it this year, but we have.
And that's the sort of thing that people have paid for this year that they are not seeing delivered. And that's the challenge. It's communicating the thousands of pages of documents two people who are just gonna look at that and say $15 million in surplus, why are we paying rates this year?
Yeah, but at the same time, then we need to do a much better job of explaining that capital expenditure rates are not the same. A lot of, most of the capital expenditure is not funded from rates. So the depreciation, development contributions or interest and debt going forward. It's too simplistic. People will do that.
It is simplistic,
But-
but it's
but-
not,
yeah.
accurate,
Yeah.
but
We've got a good comms team, they'll explain it.
Yeah, they assist with benchmarking,
Yeah, well, that could be helpful.
could be helpful, could not be, we wait and see.
Probably one of the things might be the closing of the budgets, which we're going to give you at. So, for example, in the road area, a lot of the it's around season and we'll see the flooding next year.
Yeah.
We're carrying over. We are focusing on phasing better so that it actually reflects better in the.
Any questions?
It's not gonna go away though, is it? Because if we can't get the rules like Bill's situation, if it's a moving field, you can't divide something. And is that something that you'll live with? Got to be government level.
I think it's one of the reasons why we want to start looking at new design of some of the projects that are laid out in the program done this year, so that if there is any valid reason of delaying being able to deliver something, we can pull up things for it. We were doing that going into the HDD scenario. We had that not in the benchmark that's been shown. Months of the grants and the regions to get things.
Right. Recommendation that the report be received. We have to move that. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Cheryl. Susan.
Fine.
Those in favour?
Oh, sorry.
All right. Deb, carried. Thank you very much. Right. We've still got 15 minutes, so you guys got time? Yeah, okay. Perfect. Moving ahead to CapEx report for Command and Board. CapEx, yay. Speak.
Good afternoon. This one looks good.
Yeah, this is good.
So I can quite confidently say I'm on track on budget.
Oh, just
I will be spending
a
almost millions of dollars. So nothing much has changed in this CapEx report. The highlight actually, if you go back to the back page, is again, our project has been really proactive in the community space, doing some tour groups with the school kids and the Anzac Day, taking the own initiative to decorate the Keepy memorial space with the poppy scrim. But everything is checking really well. There's a thing called the bird's nest inside the auditorium, which is basically a mass amount of scaffolding so that they can work on the technical gallery as effectively as being on ground, but they're going to be 10 meters up in the air. So there's not much to see there now, and a lot of the second level and third level have been formed off just because of the amount of work that's going on there. Hell of a lot of framing still happening, and now they're starting to close the walls in, so a lot of jibs taking place. Majority of the infrastructure for the piping networks is complete, and they're just doing the final taping of the ventilation pipes and stuff like that. Windows are going in. It's a busy space. Happy to report that we've taken most things to. I think we've due to take water to, which I'll be liaising pretty shortly, and then parks, finance, and people and culture. We think reminded me that I'm not allowed to forget about that too. So, and then we basically done a tour with everyone in the organisation, which is pretty cool, and everyone's loved it. We did the tourist team last week.
On board,
Yeah,
for the averaging on community groups per week.
yeah.
Right now. Yeah. Trying to avoid disruptions there.
I'll take any questions.
Can you talk me through finances and risks are both sitting in the district.
And that won't change because we're keeping really close oversight. I think if it was to go to green, even though it's sort of tracking there, sometimes you can't rest on your laurels but in projects. And so for us to keep that as amber, it just keeps our focus as a project team on that particular line. And the team are meeting every fortnight with the whole wider project group, and just by giving them this level of risk and this level of oversight that we have on this project is, I guess, the key driver of really good conversations in that. And so every fortnight we get a bit of a meter on how we're tracking as far as spend and everything's concerned, and we're at a very low risk point now because the building is out of the ground, as we first higher risk. However, as the sponsor, I want to keep that sort of focus on dollars to make sure that we keep front and centre.
And I guess that's the challenge, is that idea that you're out of the ground, the big risk is over, and now the risk is people go, oh, we're on budget, we'll have the extras.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, we've got gold taps in the bathroom, and David's accidentally signed off on it. So
that's right.
It'll be really good to see that really critical eye over everything.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just take you a little bit through the methodologies there. So we have construction crew and we've got a design crew, and that all comes together, and there's an independent engineering firm called TSA, which is Engineer to Contract and Engineers Rep. So basically, nailers go and build something, and then they put a claim in, TSA go and verify that claim, and when they say, yep, it's ticked off and everything is 100%, we've got engineering approval, the claim thing comes through to us. It doesn't. It actually goes through to another independent, which is Rose QS, and they scrutinise it as well. Once I've got two independent scrutinising something, then it's coming over to me.
So we're project then.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So there's a whole chain of events of this going through. So really confident when we get a variation, or if we get a downtime scenario, it's been screwed, and we've got cameras on site. So if they say, hey, we couldn't work for 3 days, what are the 3 days? Hop onto the camera and they say incremental weather. Yep, there it is, right? So we verify absolutely everything we go through. There are things that crop up, and these are just the unknown factors, right? And even though we have the ground, and I'll give you a quick example, we've got a technical gallery, and you've got to have a minimum distance between the floor of the gallery and the roof of the gallery of 2 meters. So 25 millimeters was this, which is effectively the floor, right? So we had to do an engineering solution for that. So basically, on top of the steel structure, we've got now leveling plates going through, which are secured underneath, and then you've got your floor. It's a little bit of extra work, but that's how we get the best product on it. So that variation went through a whole lot of different iterations, and we've now agreed on that everyone took pain and suffering from all sides. It wasn't missed, it just wasn't detailed, and we've moved forward with that. Sometimes there's variations that come through and we disagree with it. David and I have conversations and I go, man, I just don't see we should be paying for this. We push it back. We give our reasons why we push the thing back, and it usually gets accepted because we've built such a good relationship with the contractors and with the engineers. And that's why this business works. So at the end of the day, David says, amber, we will be amber until the last check is signed, because then when Stu says to me, got one seat ball, Gareth, I hear him quite clearly, and absolutely, when the last check is signed, that's when this light will go green.
So just picking up on that, and it's good to hear the scrutiny that goes in through the whole variation and use of the contingency process. But for some of that stuff, is say, well, it was just missed, but someone shouldn't have missed it. Well, so it may be the bad terminology to use, but say, well, someone lost 2 inches. How? Sorry, 1 inch.
That's a board measure for you.
Lost 1 inch. How and why should that cost us? Yeah. You know, so I guess we rely on that that rigor that says, you know, be fools to think that someone's going to get 100% correct, because it just doesn't. Life's not like that. So you got to accept it.
Which is why we build the contingencies.
Yeah. So what I'd like to see though, when we get the contingency stuff, is saying, well, what is the contingency budget we've got? Yeah. What's remaining, and what are the sort of things that's being spent on? Because I think for us to have that oversight, Because otherwise what's going to happen is someone who's worked on the site, someone in the pub will say, oh, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose because we didn't do something right and, we mucked something up. I think for us at an oversight level, and for me, when I built my house, it didn't cost us much. But, same sort of rigor was applied. Yes, no, not, no, your problem, not mine. But so for us, and I accept Amber, it must stay. I get that. But to give it some relevance to me in particular, when these reports come through to say, well, of that this month, and it was for X without, I don't want to dot the I's and cross the T's, but, we've still spent 3.5% on contingencies. That's $1.5 million, 1.6 million. It's not insignificant.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it would be good to have an idea of saying, and it might also be that, like we're talking with Roxburgh before, saying, actually, you might be able to tell me something that I can say, well, what about this? And I might say, oh, you better go and check something else.
Yeah. We'll probably add that into this report. So.
Yeah, we can, and remember that most of the contingency was spent upfront.
Yeah.
We identified that as the unknown factors. We will do learnings as well, because it's really important that when you go into the next build and the next project, that you take those learnings along with you. So
you're going to the next one, it's called Roxburgh.
Correct. So that's really good. And we will share that with the board as well, because it's really important that you know what you actually sign.
And it's without nickel and diming it. You might say it's only 3.5% of the budget. Well, that's not the point. It's still a big number.
Big budget.
If we could save that $1.6 million,
Yeah.
that'd be even better.
Yeah. I think that's just
We give it a rush.
Yeah.
I mean, they won't need it. I won't be.
Great idea.
Yeah, to pick up on your comments and Gareth's example, when we sort of found out about that floor, because the team is on it regularly, we pick it up really early, so that we don't get to the point of pouring the slab, putting the flooring on, all of that kind of stuff, and then go. So, I guess it just adds a bit more confidence having these regular on-site production meetings, and then
your relationship with your contractor is the most important thing you've got.
Yeah,
and I think without making this a free advertorial for nailers, in the end, we've got a pretty good contractor. And I was somewhere earlier in the week, they're working there as well in very trying circumstances, and they couldn't be spoken about high enough. So we're in the right space for the right reasons.
Well, and I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but nailers picked up a defect on what they did. It was missed by engineers. They raised it, and they've taken full responsibility, financial, to remediate. That's an exceptional project.
And I think it's awesome that you are tracking on time and on budget, but don't let that prevent you from striving for under time, under budget.
Well, Gareth's got a very good understanding of that.
it's the end.
By October the 10th, please.
I live to do
Right now.
He understands it, Gareth, he gets it.
The report be received.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil, and second, thank you, Stu. All those in favour? Yes. Carried. We'll come on to the mayor's report. Is that what you think? Rid of that holiday. How good. Right. So I did leave the last council meeting slightly early to get to Wellington for the all of government meeting, which was certainly worth attending, despite the wild weather that prevented a number of others from arriving, including those that were busy declaring civil defence emergencies in their district. We heard from a number of excellent speakers, including Minister Nicola Grigg, about the new online harm prevention toolkit for women in leadership roles, which is of course available for men to access as well. Sam Stubbs from Simplicity had a very positive message that New Zealand is heading into our most prosperous 30 years in history. He acknowledged that it maybe doesn't feel like that right now, but in part thanks to large-scale investing opportunities unlocked by New Zealand's growing KiwiSaver schemes as a pipeline for capital. Simplicity have been active in this space for the last few years with housing projects, and there certainly was enthusiasm for this from the crowd to be tackling the infrastructure gap at a national scale. And I did tell him that we've got several bridges that he could invest in if we so chose. And I also spoke to a mayor who undertook the Council Mark program about 5 years ago, and they received the worst ever rating that had ever been handed out in the Council Mark process.
But rather than see this as an abject failure, they used it as an opportunity to push the boundaries on what was possible when you talk change within a council. And they recently achieved an excellent rating following 5 years of hard work in this space. Our council will undertake this project this year. Noting council mark has been rebranded as Te Korowai. And then rather than being a finger pointing exercise, it will highlight areas where council can grow and improve. This will sit alongside the new Department of Internal Affairs Council benchmarking, which will be available to the public, looks like late June, mid to late June. The DIA spoke and advised that councils will be benchmarked on other councils covering a similar size rather than alphabetical order. So we won't be put against Christchurch, Auckland and Taupo will be against councils of a similar size and a similar rate payback. And it will cover off things including debt, CapEx, what your rates are, what the average rates are, what the increase has been over the years. I believe this will help residents and ratepayers to better understand where their council sits in terms of comparative operations. Following week, I attended the Affordable Housing Summit and ran a great group of speakers, including Shemabil Yacob, who's always fascinating. He spoke about New Zealand seeing the end of the golden assumption. That assumption being that when you retire, you will own your own home mortgage free. He also covered off demographics around the number of working age people versus retirees and how this is trending into the future worldwide. Currently, we have 4 working age people for every person over 65 in New Zealand. Within 10 years, that will be 3 to 1. We need to start planning for this, as everywhere else in the world will also be competing for migrants to come in and help to do the work. Luckily here in Central, we do have a number of retirement age people who are still working full or part-time or contributing significantly via volunteerism. And interestingly, for our previous mayor who copped a substantial amount of flack for it, the guest speaker from the Retirement Commission talked about unlocking the equity value in your home via what is a reverse mortgage. They have information available on the Retirement Commission website. He said that that was a viable option and a smart option for probably around 25 to 30% of the population. Henderson House in Alexandra hosted an event to celebrate the significant investment in their landscaping in recent years. The stunning location supports people from the arts with a residency, and it's not hard to see why such an epic spot would be inspiring for some of New Zealand's great artists, poets, composers and more who are lucky to spend time there. You can see it from here. It's basically just across the river there and looks out over the whole town. It's absolutely beautiful. We finished our long-term plan consultation period with a record number of submissions, which was outstanding. I was especially thrilled with the high number of youth submissions. After a full day of hearing, when I wrote this, it was going to be a big day of making decisions on Tuesday, and it was. Thank you for your time and effort over the past months. LTP always requires a lot of additional time from elected members, and I appreciate it will take this time. The Kanoa Regional Growth Summit was a busy morning in Dunedin with the Deputy PM Winston Peters, Minister Shane Jones and a number of other local ministers and MPs. It was again highlighted that the government wants to see collaboration taking centre stage. Minister Jones reiterated that this government is interested in extraction industries as it means to grow wealth for New Zealand. Yep. We are now well underway with our local water done well consultation, Southern Water, which closes on the 6th of June. We've tried a few alternative ways of connecting with people and trying to explain an incredibly complex topic, and a lot of people are horrified that we had used an American company to summarise our document into a 9-minute podcast, which we of course did not do. We used an AI generated tool and you couldn't choose a different. So we have not been outsourcing that offshore. That is AI at its best. AI does of course not replace people-to-people interaction, but for those people who have 9 minutes while driving in the car somewhere to listen to a podcast, that's another way for them to get information that's not listening to the document, reading through the document online.
What's a podcast?
It's on our,
Asking for a friend.
it's on the Southern Water Done Well. You can get it on the wireless. I continue to work with the steering group around the lack of national health services on the ground locally, and that's been another hot topic of conversation. We're remaining engaged with current providers such as Dunstan Hospital and potential new providers within the Central Otago and Queenstown Lakes area. Much of this is about continually getting the message and challenges we face in front of the right people, because as we've seen, the challenges that they have in health in Wanaka and then across Cromwell, across the Mini-Toto, across Alexandra, it is a factor everywhere. And I would also like to acknowledge the hard work of Peter and the team, especially over the last 2 months. Many of our staff have worked nights, weekends and public holidays to bring our long-term plan to life and enable us to connect with as many people as possible. There has been very little let up as we headed straight into Southern Water done well. So thank you to all of those who have contributed, with a special shout out to the comms team and appreciated. It's my report. I'm happy to move that it be received. Neil is happy to second that. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And we will now take a short break for lunch and do that at 1 o'clock with